So I saw someone by the name of Gizmo do a Minecraft weapon tier list, and I felt like there were a few things that weren't quite right and a few things that were missing. So I decided to make my own spin on the video, but do go check out the original video. I'll link in the description and do one of those YouTube card thingies that go in the upper right corner. Anyways, make sure to like, subscribe, and enjoy the video. The water bucket. Uh, the water bucket is an essential item for PvP in like what I'm gonna refer to as lower class game modes. Like UHC, it's gonna be really important to use your water bucket very well. Along with that, it can be used to basically completely negate fall damage everywhere except the Nether. Oh, it is really good. It's not I don't think it's S tier because it's got its weaknesses. Like anyone with Depth Strider can completely bypass a water bucket slow. But other than that, like there's not much weak about a water bucket. I'm gonna put it at A, not because it's a good weapon, but because it's got a lot of utility uses. Alrighty, now we got the Wither Rose. My problem with the Wither Rose is it lacks versatility and usability and like damage. You're not gonna deal a ton of damage with it, and it's really easy to counter it. You just break the Wither Rose and it breaks instantly. I don't. I mean, it does deal damage. It like deals damage and can kill stuff. So I'll put it in E tier rather than F. I'll spare it from that fate. End crystals. Now I'm gonna get flamed by all the crystal people for this decision. End crystals are also going to go in A tier with water buckets. As great as end crystals are, they're hella expensive. In a duel, like on a duel server, they're the best item you can get. In a fight, they're one of the best items you can use. But like on a vanilla server, you have to like make a ghast farm and have Eyes of Ender, so you have to have Ender Pearls and Blaze Rod, so you have to have an Enderman farm or villagers and a blaze farm, but to mass produce, and you have to get a ton of glass. Mass producing end crystals is really difficult. They don't have that overall. They're useful and they deal property damage, so they don't have like that versatility where you could use them anytime, anywhere, and it's really easy to kill yourself with one. All right, the bow. Uh, in terms of weaknesses, the problem with the bow. It's really, 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 really balanced. It's got decent damage, decent time to attack, good range, and the enchants that go on the bow are good. So I'm gonna put the bow in S tier. It's useful at any point in the game, end game, early game, mid game, at any point in the game. The bow is a useful item, even a very strong one in some game modes. And overall, the bow is just super versatile. You're typically not going to be able to deal property damage with the bow or anything like that either. Respawn anchors. They have all the problems with end crystals. They have all the problems that end crystals do, being that they're difficult to acquire, so on and so forth. And on top of that, they're difficult to mass produce. And on top of that, you have respawn anchor spammers, and I don't like them personally, so I'm putting the respawn anchor in B tier. Okay, the trident. The trident is good. Do not get me wrong. However, it doesn't have the versatility of an S tier weapon. And it doesn't have, like, it's not even in its own niche. It's got two uses, pretty much. The channeling enchantment, which is like, it's reliant on a really low chance of a thunderstorm happening during the fight. And it's got a slow attack speed, and without loyalty, it doesn't even return you, so it's a really expensive item that's completely useless without enchants. Its attack speed is really slow, and it doesn't break shields like an axe. So I think, basically, the biggest thing with a trident is it's really useful for Riptide and channeling. But otherwise, it's not an amazing weapon. I think I'm gonna go as far as to put it in the C tier. Like, it's a very mid-tier weapon. Nothing very strong about it, nothing very weak. Now we've got the lava bucket, and the lava bucket is interesting because it's almost got all the uses of a water bucket. It's got a lot of similar usefulnesses to the water bucket. It's countered by the water bucket. It's really good early and mid game. However, once you get into the late game, a lava bucket is practically useless. It's really good until the late game. Like, if we were talking mid game or early game, you could be seeing A, even S tier from a lava bucket. But it's not. It's not that level. So I have to put the lava bucket down here in B tier for just a lack of versatility across game modes. Cobwebs suffer the same problem as the lava bucket, except it's a little different with cobwebs, because cobwebs can still be used in the end game. Don't get me wrong, cobwebs can still be used in the end game, and they can still be a pretty powerful weapon. You don't use them for damage like a lava bucket. Problem is, they're pretty easily countered by a sword, or ender pearls, or anything anyone would have in the end game. So they suffer from all the weaknesses of a lava bucket, except they're useful in the end game, except they're also countered by a lot of different items in the end game. Alrighty, beds. Now, this is an item that gets slept on in combat a lot. On like a server where you get death banned, it's not going to be as useful, but like a bed can be used to suicide in the nether, the end. It can be used to replace a respawn anchor or end crystal in the nether end. In the overworld, it can be used to set a respawn point so that you can rush an opponent over and over again. If we're talking about nether PvP, it's cheap and it's just as effective as an end crystal or respawn anchor. So for the nether, the end, we would be looking at A tier. In the overworld, we're looking at C tier. Because of that difference, I think the bed is also going to earn itself a spot in B tier. Okay, so the sword. S tier. It's useful in literally every game mode. At every point in the game. For one reason or another. For crystal PvP, it's for the knockback enchantment. For axe, it's higher DPS, so if you know how to use it, you're going to shred your opponent. In UHC, OP, Diamond Pot, and Nether Pot, it's the main weapon. The sword is a really strong weapon that earns itself a place up here in the S tier. Now the snowball. Now, there's the video that this video is based off of. There is an inaccuracy in that video. The snowball is only going to damage other mobs. It won't actually do anything to players. You can't damage players with it. It's not even really a distraction to anyone with more than 2 brain cells, and because it's basically useless, it goes in the F tier. Also, you can see the egg here. It's got the same problem as the snowball, and it's also going in F tier with the snowball. Magma block. Okay. So this is an item that's very similarly weak to the Wither Rose. However, it doesn't break instantly. And it's more effective in like mob farms and stuff. For that, we're going to go 1 tier up. And we're going to put it in D tier. It's got some weaknesses that Wither Roses don't. But I think because Wither Roses are in E tier, and Magma Blocks have a little more versatility and strength to them, they barely earn themselves a place in D tier. TNT. Okay, so I'm going to get yelled at for this. TNT is a C tier weapon. Now, TNT, and I'll get to this later in the video, TNT can be used to make really high-level weaponry. However, TNT itself, you're not going to deal a ton of damage with. You can deal some damage. Okay, I was a bit wrong about that. You can deal decent damage to a player in like full netherite, but you're not getting the most out of your explosives if you're just using the TNT block. It's good for knockback, it's good for damage, and if your opponent is an idiot, the TNT block is really good. However, anyone with more than 2 brain cells is not going to die to the average block of TNT. Sweetberry Bush. Okay, so a fully grown Sweetberry Bush actually deals damage, is broken instantly, and otherwise doesn't do a ton of useful things. The only difference between a Sweetberry Bush and a Wither Rose is that the Sweetberry Bush slows you down, but I really don't think that's enough to put it in D tier because it can be broken instantly. Okay, weakness potions. I decided to go with the potion effect icon for this, so a weakness potion is useful in game modes where you're going to be using a sword, everything but crystal, basically. If your opponent is using explosives, it's pretty useless. However, it's not going to deal damage to your opponent or anything like that. Weakness is good for escaping a fight or giving yourself a minor advantage. It can also be used to counter strength. For that, we're having another B tier entry. Another B tier entry with weakness going in the B tier, along with a lot of other weapons. Alrighty, Firework Rockets. On their own, they have a critical weakness, and that's that good luck hitting someone with one. It's super hard to hit someone with a Firework Rocket. When you hit them, though, they've got that TNT effectiveness. The problem is, they're even harder to actually hit your opponent with than TNT. So the Firework Rocket itself goes in D tier, and we'll get to putting it in a crossbow soon. I already dealt with the egg, and so now we're going to poison. I'm using just the pot for poison, because that's really easy. Here's the thing. Poison is mildly useful in UHC and Axe. In almost any other game mode, you're not hardly going to get any value out of it against a good player. Heck, you might screw yourself over using poison because of knockback immunity frames. So normally, this would go in E tier, because you can almost shoot yourself in the back with this. However, it is somewhat useful in lower level game modes, and so I'll put a poison pot in the D tier. The Diamond Hoe. He included, like, every tool in his tier list, and most of the items in here are just me kind of redoing his tier list. This thing is terrible. It's going in F tier because you can accomplish just as much with your fist. Harming potions. Okay, so harming potions are really good unless your opponent has totems and gaps and all the rest of that stuff that, you know, everybody carries with them by the time you have potions. By the time you're fighting people with potions, your opponent's likely going to have stuff that'll counter a potion of harming. Also, it's not really enough damage to warrant its use. It's not super useless like the poison potion. Like, you can't shoot yourself in the foot with this. But I'm not putting a harming potion with the trident and the TNT. I think narrowly we have another D tier item. Okay, the crossbow. The crossbow is better than the bow early game. So for axe specifically, your crossbow is going to be even better than your bow. You're going to get more use out of it most of the time. However, as you get later and later into the game, the crossbow becomes less and less and less useful. However, it does still have its uses, particularly with the piercing enchantment, multi-shot enchantment. It's got some unique properties, and I think because of that, the crossbow is going to go in A tier. The firework crossbow. Now, this is a weapon that people don't use, which is super weird. I think it's because nobody thinks of it. But if you set it up right, you're going to be cranking out a ton of damage with this thing. And with multi-shot quick charge, you can fire up a ton of fireworks with it. It turns a D tier item into, like, almost an S tier item. Like, I want to put it, like, right there. because I can't tell if I want to put it in the A tier or the S tier. It's just such a I'm not sure item for me. So I'm literally going to put it right here because it has its S tier moments, but it also has moments where it's not going to be as useful. Not to mention, it's really easy to friendly fire with this thing. Okay, the shield. I think we all know where this is going, so let's just skip to the end. A shield is an S tier item. The only thing that counters it is an axe. And the fact that it's got relatively low durability compared to a lot of other items. But you can fix that. You can fix durability problems with mending and unbreaking, which you can get from villagers really easily. And by the time your shield durability is an issue, you're late enough in the game to get those items. Shield, really good item. Countered only by like explosives, the lava bucket, and the axe, and potions. But even then, we've already established potions are not a very good item. There's no point using inventory slots on potions to counter shields. Flint and steel. Okay. This is a classic, but I feel like flint and steel is less of a weapon in and of itself and more of a utility for other weapons, like TNT and burning down wooden structures and stuff. I think I'm putting the flint and steel in the D tier because it's more of a utility than it is actually going to be good for dealing damage to players. Alrighty, the shovel. The thing with the shovel, it actually deals damage. Otherwise, it's not a ton of damage and it's not a very good weapon. So I'm putting it in the tier that I've put other weapons with that description in. The E tier. You know, it actually deals damage, but otherwise isn't really a good weapon. The pickaxe is in a very similar position to the shovel. However, the pickaxe, I'm actually going to do the same thing I did with the firework crossbow and put it there. Because it deals slightly more damage, and I'm pretty sure a pickaxe attacks slightly faster than a shovel does. If I'm wrong, you can yell at me in the comments, though. Anvils. Good for traps, if you know you can get your opponent into a spot where you can hit them with an anvil. They're going to deal a lot of damage to helmets. Problem is, good luck hitting them on an opponent that's actually in a fight. I'm going to go with E tier, because it's so impossible to hit an opponent with an anvil from a distance that matters. Cacti. Okay, this one is basically Sweetberry Bush 2.0 electric Boogaloo. Like, except it doesn't instant break. That's like, it doesn't instant break, it doesn't slow you down, and it's even easier to avoid. Like, the only thing it has over the Sweetberry Bush is that it doesn't break instantly. Fishing rod. So here's the deal. I play 1.16 a lot, but I do play some 1.8. In 1.8, I'd be putting this at A tier. Like, that's where this goes in 1.8. Easily. A tier because you're not really going to do much with just the fishing rod, but it's a really, really important utility to go with a sword. However, in 1.16, it's got a very specific use in combat, pull opponent. And that's only useful in a couple scenarios, and it's countered pretty easily if your opponent sees what you're doing. That would put it in D tier. So, finding a middle ground, we're trying to figure out B or C. Because I play more 1.16, I'm going to lean towards the 1.16 option more in my tier list. So we're putting the fishing rod in C tier with the trident and the TNT. Campfires. Why? Why? Why are you using campfires? E tier, for the same reason almost everything else is in here. It deals damage, it's not that useful though. Fire charges. They deal damage. They're kind of hard to hit, but if you hit them, they're basically guaranteed fire. And in some mini games, they're made more powerful. So, in like Bed Wars, A or B tier, easily. Just for this tier list, we're going to put the fire charge in D tier. Ender Pearl. So here's the deal. Ender Pearls can damage you. However, Basically, any game mode where you have prop 4 armor, that doesn't matter. The damage is almost nothing. So, in a game mode like Crystal, this is an essential utility movement item. In a game mode like Netherite Pod or an SMP kit, it's an essential movement and utility item. In game modes like Axe and UHC, you're shooting yourself in the foot by using them. So I think there's more game modes where Ender Pearls are useful than there are when game modes where they aren't. I think an Ender Pearl is going to go in A tier. Not to mention that you can use those to save yourself from fall damage pretty easily. The Dispenser. This suffers the same issue as Flint and Steel, except it can't be used as a decent combat item on its own. So it's going to go in E tier. Not for the same reason everything else is in E tier, though. The Dispenser makes a lot of these other items useful, like the Fire Charge. The only reason a Fire Charge is useful is because of Dispenser. The Dispenser would also buff a Firework, or, you know, lava. It can be used with lava and water. It can be used with snowballs, eggs, all sorts of stuff can be used with a Dispenser. The Axe. S tier weapon. Now, I'm mostly not taking 1.8 into account here. In 1.8, you're gonna go like D tier just because why would you use an axe? There's no reason to. But because I mostly play 1.16, we're going for the S tier because that is an essential weapon early game and a useful one late game for countering people who use a ton of shields, which is, we all know how annoying that is. It's nice to have an axe to deal with people who just use a ton of shields. So, I'll be right back while I grab a couple more things that I forgot. And we're back with a couple more items I forgot. Let's start with something that nobody expected. So the sand here, I've decided to use it to represent suffocating someone, which I think, just like the anvil, it's got all the same problems as the anvil. So I think we're gonna put it sand in the E tier. Now the TNT minecart, this is the thing I was talking about earlier. This is where you can take a C tier item and amplify it. So I think you have definitely made it stronger, but it's got weaknesses. It has to be triggered, and instantly triggering it basically means you gotta trap your opponent or you gotta know how to instacart, which is like a whole other thing. You guys should tell me in the comments if you guys want to see a video on cart PvP, but there's like a whole meta surrounding using carts in combat. At B tier, because it's like a little bit of an upgrade, and it would be good like End Crystals or the Firework crossbow, but it's got the weakness of needing some sort of a trigger. Alrighty, armor. Do I even need to explain why armor is S tier? You basically can't live in a fight without it. And the Totem of Undying. This is an item, the only thing holding it back from being S tier is its rarity. And so the only thing holding them back from being S tier is the fact that they're difficult. They're difficult to obtain without a farm or advanced game knowledge or super uber rare structures. So yeah, so this is the final tier list. You guys let me know if there are items I should add to the tier list, or maybe if you think that I'm just straight up wrong and one of these items I put down here is bad and one of these items up here is good.